Welcome back to the session on computers, fundamentals of computers. Yesterday we were discussing about the different generations of computers. We'll once again revise it in 5 minutes, and then we'll move on to the different types of computers we have, and we'll see how they are classified and characterized. So before that, firstly, fundamentals of computers. In this, yesterday we were seeing different generations, right? So the first generation we had the first generation. This generation of computers were using vacuum tubes. Until the first generation of computers, we had technologies that were only restricted to a single set of operation, or those kind of computers were only able to perform only restricted or constrained tasks. But with the help of vacuum tubes, we were able to create circuits and computers that were able to perform multiple tasks and at a much more faster pace. But the problem with vacuum tubes was they were very large in size and they consumed lot of electricity. The problem with this is lot of electricity, and because of that we had issues with, and it generated lot of heat. So yesterday we know that we understood that what are the different kinds of what are the different generations of computers we had and what were the terminologies. So for today, till today we have been accustomed, or we have been used to these kind of terms, terminologies, generations, etc. So I would like to give you a little more brief introduction into the generations. Now the first generation were using vacuum tubes, and they had lot of they were consuming so much electricity and they generated so much heat. This was the biggest problem that we had with the first generation of computers. Then we had the second generation of computers. In this generation, we evolved a little more and we started using transistors. I am just giving you the major differences in the technology that happened between the generations, because every generation we classify generations in such a way that wherever we have a drastic change or where we have so much evolution in the technology, in such cases we classify them into different generations. So firstly we had vacuum tubes, where it was used for nearly 30-40 years. After that we shifted towards the second generation of computers, which were using transistors. All the transistors were invented in 1946, around 1946, but to get them integrated into our computers and to start working with the computers in the practical world, it was around 1960s. Until early 1960s, we couldn't have those transistors inbuilt into our computers. That is how any kind of a technology happens. Any technology, it starts slowly, and then it takes a little time to evolve. By the time people start using the technology and we start evolving and start understanding the technology, it nearly takes a decade generally. The same thing happened with transistors too, where transistors were also similar to vacuum tubes, but they were much more smaller in size. Okay. Now what happened because of this? Because they were much more smaller in size, we didn't require larger rooms or larger spaces to put these computers, or they didn't occupy much of the space for us. That was the first thing. And these transistors were 100 times faster than what the vacuum tubes were previously. And the third thing is they have brought in miniature kind of a design. Miniature in the sense, vacuum tubes had required so much space to be consumed, but transistors didn't require that much space, but still they were also occupying a little space. But the problem with transistors was the same thing, they were also generating lot of heat. Okay, they were also generating lot of heat. So when we had the first two generations, until then we didn't have much technology to be technology to use these kind of computers or to start with. But when we started, it took a little time for us to understand things, to get used to them, and then we started doing our research and we started finding out different kinds of technologies. So whenever you consider the different generations of computers, the first and second generation sit under one roof, because both of them were not so small, not like the computers that we use in today's world, as well as they were generating lot of heat. But compared to vacuum tubes, this was better, and both of them, the similarity was these two used punch cards. Yesterday we were talking about punch cards, right? Punch cards. Both of them were using punch cards to store the data, to process it, and to give an output to the user. This is what is about the first and second generations. Then the next thing we have is the third generation. Third generation. What do we have in the third generation? In the third generation, we evolved a little more and we started with ICs. What do you mean by ICs? Integrated circuits. Integrated circuits. What do you have in this integrated circuits? Generally, whatever previously we had vacuum tubes which were of very big size, of this size, then we had transistors with a little smaller size, and then now we have ICs. ICs are of very small size, they were of the most possible miniature that we could do. They were just, we had boards of this size in which the circuits were totally integrated, and the circuits were totally this is the chip I am talking about. This is an IC. It was so compressed or so designed in such a way that it was brought into a very small design. That is all because of the ICs. In the third generation, we started using the ICs, and based on that we had we could enter into the technology, the starting era of the technology of today's world. Next we had the fourth generation. What did we find in the fourth generation? In the fourth generation, we started to use ICs with VLSI technology. VLSI. What do you mean by VLSI? Very large scale integration. Very large scale integration. This means that we used to have in a computer, what do you have? What does the architecture of a computer contain? If there are so many circuits in your computer, all of them are compressed to a very small design or into a very small chip. That was possible with the help of VLSI. We could fit in around hundreds of thousands of circuits, hundreds of thousands of circuits into one small chip. Okay, into one chip. This is what we were discussing about in VLSI. And then what do you have in the fifth generation? In the fifth generation, we evolved even more and we started to use ICs with, we have brought in new technologies like ULSI. This had hundreds of millions of transistors or circuits, hundreds of millions. Just a minute. Hundreds of millions of transistors of circuits. Circuits into the computer. So, what happened because of this? Because we were able to include even more number of circuits into the ICs, we could perform even more tasks like high level tasks. We could perform very much so many tasks at a time or in, because with the power of one IC chip. Okay. This was how the evolution had happened. Now we all have a little bit idea about the generations, how many generations do we have, and what all technologies or what all features we had in those kinds of computers. Now let's discuss about the different types of computers that we have. When you talk about the types of computers, you have two types. Okay. You can classify computers into two ways. One is based on the processing and based on the input that is taken by the computer. There are two ways. One is what kind of input are you providing to the computer. Based on that we have a different classification, and the other classification is based on the processing that we have. Now, based on the input, if we see, we have three types of computers. The first thing is analog computers. The second one is digital, and the third one is hybrid. Okay. We had three kinds of computers. The first one is analog, the next is digital, and then we had hybrid. First, let us see what is analog, what do you mean by analog computer? Analog computers they required continuous signals. They required continuous signals to be given as an input, and they could only process those signals and give you an output. The best example for analog computers is, just a minute, I will write it here, analog computers. The best example for analog computers is petrol pumps. Multimeters. Multimeters are electronic devices that are used to find out the voltage levels in a device or in a circuit. That is what multimeters are used for. And petrol pumps. Petrol pumps, what does it do? Based on the input or based on the petrol pumps calculate the petrol that is being sent into, like it is giving out. Based on that, there is a digital meter that is calculating. There is a digital meter for us in the petrol pumps that will be calculating whatever is the process that is happening. So, all these kinds of things come under analog computers. And then we have something called digital computers. What do you mean by digital computers? In digital computers, we have the computers that we are using in today's world. The computers that are used for data processing, whatever data we want to process, the data that we are storing, all that comes under digital computers. And hybrid computers are all based upon the combination of analog plus digital. Hybrid computers are based on analog plus digital. They can perform both the operations of analog computers as well as digital computers. The best example that I can give for analog computers is the heartbeat machines that are used for calculating the heartbeat of a patient. They take in the analog signals and also they process whatever is required the data and they store it accordingly in that machine. These are the kinds of machines that we can process under hybrid computers. And then let's see about the second part of the computers, that is based on the processing. Based on the processing, we have different kinds of computers. But before going into this, I would like to explain you about the machine language, what kind of a language does the computer have and how does it understand those values and everything, because without understanding that, even if I talk to you about the processing of the different types of computers that we have which process the data, how is it taking it and what kind of instructions does it understand, you have to understand all of this first. So yesterday I was talking to you about the concept of binary. In binary, we have something called binary, means 0 and a 1, right? The computers only understand this language, not even this. It will only understand what is 0, what is 1. So as I told you yesterday, that 0 means there is no output, and 1 means there is an output. This is how computers understand. How do they understand by 0 means? Suppose we have a circuit. Suppose generally your gates, you have your gates like this. This is a general circuit that I am drawing. Suppose this is a circuit. Let's assume the circuits inside your computer generally look like this, and this is just a very basic example that I wanted to give you. These are the input terminals for this circuit, and this will be the output for the circuit. Suppose I am providing some input, let's say an input of 0 and 1. Okay. Now when the output over here is 0 based on the process that the circuit did, then that will be no output. Okay, there will be no output. But in case this circuit, instead of this, it's giving you a 1, then there will be an output. So based on the circuit and the output that it gives, the computer would be understanding if there is an output or not, or what kind of an output it has, because generally it's not only about the 0 and 1 if there is an output or not. Suppose the circuit that is being processing or into which there is some voltage that is passed, if there is an output after the circuit has been processed, then it will consider it as 1 because there is some voltage that is passed into that circuit and there is some process that has happened. Based on that, it will understand that. Now, let us not make it more complicated, but I want you to understand about binaries first. The computer generally understands only zeros and ones, that is what we know until now. Now, how will it understand? Suppose if I typed in 2 on the keyboard, how will it understand that it is only 2 and not any other number? It is based on the binary conversion. So, I would like to show you the binary conversion now. Generally in computers or anywhere mathematically, if you consider, binary means 0 or 1, right. So, for a, let's draw a table for all the numbers. 0 will be 0 0, 1 will be 0 1, 2 will be 1 0, 3 will be 1 1. How did I get this? Let us stop till here and we will try to understand how we got these numbers. Generally, if we are talking about binary, binary means 0 and 1, right. So, how many digits do you have? 2. So, if you want to convert, this is a decimal number. First of all, you have to understand this is decimal number, this is binary, right. In decimals, you have numbers like 0, 1, 2, 3, that is widely used and we all follow this this kind of format. But if the computer has to understand this binary format, we have to first convert this decimal into binary. How do we do it? If it is, suppose let us take 2, okay, let us take 2. Now, to convert the decimal number 2 into binary format, you have to divide that 2 by 2, okay. So, 2 ones are 2 and what is the remainder? Whatever you get as the remainder, you have to write it over here. Now, what is the next thing we have? Is 2 divisible by 1? Is 1 divisible by 2? No, it won't be able to divisible, it won't be able to divide. So, in such cases, until what point we get that number is divisible by the other, we have to calculate till there. We will see much more examples now, then you will get an idea, but as of now 1 cannot divide 2 anymore. In such cases, you will stop the division there and you start writing your number this way, like this. So, it will be 1 0. I will take a bigger number, you will understand it better. Suppose we are considering a number like 22, okay, or okay 22. Now, this is a decimal number. We have to convert this number into binary format. How do we do it? We have to divide it by 2. Anytime if you want to convert a decimal number into binary, you have to divide it by 2. When you are dividing it by 2, it will be 2 11s are 22 and you have a remainder of 0. Then you will be dividing 2 again further, 2 5s are 10. 2 5s are 10 and your remainder will be, this time your remainder will be 1, okay, because it is 11, right. So, your remainder is 1. Next time 2 2s are 4, again you have a remainder of 1, 2 1s are 2. This time you do not have any other remainder, right. Now, how do we have to write the binary number sequence? Whenever we are writing, we have to start from this point and we have to go up. So, what is the binary number sequence for this number, decimal number 22? For 22, it will be 1 0 1 1 0. This will be the binary number for 22. Whenever we input 22 in the keyboard, the computer will interpret and translate it into this kind of a format, where it will understand that this number is 22. And it will start processing the data based on this and not on the decimal format that we have provided. Now, how do we check if this binary number is equal to 22 or not? We will see that also. we'll see how we can convert this binary number back to the decimal. That is, what is the binary number we got? 10110. We have to convert it back into 22. Now, when we are converting decimal number 22 into binary form, we were dividing it by 2. So, each number is a power of 2. That is how we convert it back into decimal. Let us see. So, this number can be represented as 2 power 1 plus 2 power 0 plus 2 power 1 plus 2 power 1 plus 2 power 0. This is how we represent the number. Because we were converting it into binary, every digit is a power of 2. That is how we represent it. Now, what is 2 power 0? Any number to the power 0 will be 1 plus 2 power 1 is 2 and 2 power 1 is again 2. No, wait. I am sorry. These are your digits, right? How many digits do we have? We have 5 places, right? So, we have 5 zeros, and whatever is the digits place that we have to mention the power over here. So, this will be the units place, that is the 0th position. So, it will be 2 power 0, and next we have the 10th position. So, this will be 2 power 1, and then we have what position is this? This is the 100th position. So, it will be 2 power 2, 2 power 3, 2 power 4. What is 2 power 0? 2 power 0 is 1. Any number to the power 0 is 1. Next we have 2 power 1, that is 2, and then we have 2 power 2 is 4, and then 2 power 3 is 8, 2 power 4 is 16. When you 2 power 4, so 2 power 0 is 1, right? Just a minute, I made some mistake. 2 power 0 is 1, next 2 power 1 is 2, 2 power 2 is 4, 8, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 power 3, just a minute, I made some mistake over here. Let me calculate this correctly, like, okay, the number is 10110, 10110, right? Now, what will this be like? 2 power 0 plus 2 power 1 plus 2 power 1, 2 power 2 plus 2 power 3, sorry, just a minute. We have the number like 10110, right? So, whenever you are converting your binary number into decimal back, now carefully listen over here. The first digit you have to consider this digit 0 into 2 power 0, okay, plus 1 into 2 power 1 plus 1 into 2 power 1. Plus 0 into 2 power, this will be 2 power 0, 1, 2, this will be 2 power 3 plus 1 into 2 power 4. Why is it like that? Did you understand this? Because wherever we are having a 0, that is a no output case, right? Wherever it's a 0, it's a no output case. Now, what will happen whenever there is no output at that position? We are not going to consider that position. That is the reason we are converting this values and multiplying it by the whatever 0 or 1 we are having. Now, in this case, I will write it the other way. Wait. Now, what is happening here? 0, right? this will be 2 power 0. What is the 0th units place value over there? 0. So you have to multiply it by 0. Then 1 is in the tens place, so it will be 1 into 2 power 1, and then we have 1 again in the hundreds place also, so it will be 1 into 2 power 2. Why is it 2 power 2 over here? Because we have this in the third position, like in the hundreds position, and then we have to add it with 0 into 2 power 3, because this is in the thousands position, and finally what we have 1 into 2 power 4. Now if you add it 2 power any number to the power 0 is 1, so this will be 0 plus 0 into 1 plus this will be 1 into 2 plus this will be 1 into 4. 2 power 2 is 4, right? Then 0 into 2 power 3 is 8. Then we have 1 into 2 power 4 is 16. So you will have 1 into 16. Now when you add all this, this is cancelled. 0 into 8 is 0, 0 into 1 is 0. Now what is that we have? 4 plus 2 plus 16, that is 22. So finally we are getting a value, that is what we have entered into the computer. This is how we convert your binary into decimal and decimal into binary. Any number you consider, it will be the same. Next, the same way we have written that table. What was the table? 0 0 is 0, 0 0 will be 0, 0 1 will be 1, 1 0 will be 2, 1 1 will be 3. The same way. Now you can try it at home, where you can find out the other binary values for the decimal numbers that you want. You can consider 124 and just divide it by 2 and check out what will be the value. Based on the remainders that you get over here, you can just start from here and go till the top and find out the binary number. If you want, we can calculate it now. Otherwise, you can take it as an example or an activity. And then there is one more thing I want to tell you. This is about binary, right? If you want to convert any number into, how many types of formats do we have? One is binary, then we can have hexadecimal format, octal, these and your decimal. Decimal is what we generally use. So these are the different formats we have. When you want to convert your number from decimal to any of these things, for binary you will be dividing by 2, for hexadecimal you will be dividing by 6, and for octal you will be dividing by 8. If you want a number that is something that is into hexa or octal, you have to divide it by 6 and 8. But with hexadecimal we have to consider one case over here, where when we divide this number by 6, there might be chances, or general format of hexadecimal is like 0 to 9, and if you have a number when it is divided by 6, you might get a remainder of 10, 11, 12, something like that. So whenever you get a remainder of 10, it will be considered as A. When you get a remainder of 11, it will be considered as B. When you get a remainder of 12, it will be considered as C. 13 will be D, 14 will be E, and 15 will be F. Your hexadecimal formats ends here because we already have 16 digits over here. How is it possible? Because 0 to 9 are 10, and 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, from 11 to 15 are again 6. So you totally have 16 digits into your conversion, right? Now this is how you convert your binary into hexadecimal and octal. Octal also the same way. You will be dividing it by 8 and you will be getting the digits. this thing is very important because whatever calculations or whatever we do, all are dependent upon this. And in the fourth generation of computers, we were talking about assembly languages. Assembly language and machine language. What do you mean by assembly and machine language? Assembly language is a language which consists of different set of instructions. Assembly languages have set of instructions that are converted into the machine language. There are two ways here. In the different generations of computers, we have different kinds of programs that are defined. When it comes to this kind of a generation, what they did was, there were some computers that took in input as assembly instructions, and with the help of an assembler, they used to convert it into machine language, because it isn't possible for us to manually convert all the whatever instructions we are providing to the computer manually. So we take the help of an assembler to convert it into machine language. Your assembly language is always something like, you have short codes, AXF. Okay, you have short codes for your assembly language like this. Based on those codes, each of it is programmed in such a way that there are different instructions for that. Whenever you provide an instruction to the computer, that is converted into assembly language from the assembly language to the machine language by the assembler, and over there you will be able to find out, the computer will be able to understand what instruction it has to follow. This is all for the fourth generation. And then we started using the latest processors where they are much more better technologies and all. We will see all of them in the next class, and also the computer architecture, where we'll be talking about how are the components inside the CPU are connected, what kind of components we have. And that's all for today. Thank you.